Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about best practices for estimating and risk mitigation on projects, and we're pleased to have Eagle View here with us. They're going to help supplement some of the stuff that we're talking about, as well as show their capability. So one of the interesting things about this webinar is that in addition to myself, I'm Trent Cotney, CEO of Cotney Construction Law Talking. We also have John Kinney, who is our Chief Operating Officer at Cotney Construction Law and also CEO of Cotney Consulting Group. And he's going to talk about best practices for estimating. John has 45 years experience in the industry. He's worked as a union roofer in New Jersey all the way up to Chief Operating Officer and has worked for top 100 roofing contractors. So wealth of knowledge, glad to have him here, and I think he'll be able to supplement some of the discussions. As always, if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. This is, educational, it's lighthearted, so if you have questions, comments, please let us know, and we're happy to answer them throughout the course of the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be talking about three things primarily. We're going to talk about the importance of documenting job site conditions. And when I say that, obviously, I've always got my lawyer hat on, and what we do day in and day out is we represent roofing companies, contractors, trades, and we see what goes wrong, right? But we also have the capability of looking at things from a business perspective and providing customers with an idea of what best practices should be to avoid liability. So one of the things that we're going to do in the context of documenting job site conditions is I'm going to give you some real world examples of things that you can do that will assist you and help you avoid potential litigation. Okay, nobody likes lawyers, right? Myself included, with the exception of the people that work here. I'd much rather hang out with contractors, roofers, you name it. But the idea here is let's be proactive rather than reactive. Next thing we're going to talk about is proper estimating, and John's going to go through his best practices. He's served as chief estimator for multi-million-dollar contractors, so he'll be able to give you some insight into that. What's interesting is when you look out there throughout the United States, there's a lot of different consultants that talk about sales and they talk about business in general. I don't really know of anybody that talks about estimating, so you're going to get some real firsthand knowledge there, which I'm excited about. And then we'll end up with some ideas on contract management, how to manage your contracts correctly. And we're going to talk about retention of records. One of the things that's often overlooked is how long do you have to keep something? What do I do with it? And that's something that contractors don't necessarily think about. Most of their documents, if they have documents, are stuck in a warehouse somewhere and they don't think twice about it. And we're just going to talk a little bit about best practices there. What's the best way to keep those documents so that you can obtain them if you need them. So let's go ahead and get started here. Documenting job site conditions is one of the things that I really harp on. And I'll give you a great example with a residential roofing contractor that I was talking to just before I got on this phone call. So this happens, I get a call like this at least once a day, some variation of this. And the call goes something like this. It's trying, I'm working on this house. It's a shingle roof, and they've got we have a leak. Okay, especially now during storm season. We're here in Florida, but anywhere where you're going to get the summer storms, whether it's in Texas or out west, wherever it might be, you're going to have issues with regard to drying, with regard to tarping or blue roofing a job properly. And you may end up in situations where you're going to get water intrusion. So back to the story. The roofing contractor called me and he said, "Hey, Trent, I got a problem. I got a roof leak here, and I've gone out, I've addressed it. It wasn't that big a deal, but what the owner is trying to do is they're trying to say that all this other damage that's in this house is a result of this one leak. And I know it's not, Trent. I saw how this place looked ahead of time, and all this stuff was pre-existing." Okay, so I'm talking to this gentleman and I say, "Well, okay, did you take any photos of that?" "No, I didn't do that." "Okay, did you do a write-up? Did you do a memo on it? Did you write an email on it? Did you take notes, anything?" "No, I didn't do that." "Did you take a video of it?" "Nope, didn't do that either." Well, at that point, it becomes your word against the homeowner's word, and that's always a 50-50 proposition. So what do I suggest? Let's talk about some things that you can do to help protect yourself if you are in this kind of situation. Okay, when you're taking up a deck, so classic re-roof, 2-day job, you go out, you tear off the old roof, put on the new roof, right? Deck replacement is almost a given in most situations. You'll go out and you will end up finding deck that needs to be removed and replaced. And most of you, contractually, although this is a different webinar, I will mention it's critical that you've got a time and materials component in your contract to account for these extra type of issues. One of the things where we often run into disputes on is where a homeowner sees the price of the roof is $10,000, is $12,000, whatever it might be, but then they get an extra $2,000 in deck replacement, and they don't want to pay it, right? So part of the issue there is making sure that you have what you need contractually. The other part of that is making sure that you're doing your job to manage the customer's expectations, right? You've got to be able to help them understand that there are going to be extra charges. I haven't, rarely do I encounter a pristine roof deck, and it doesn't happen that often. So usually there's going to be at least one piece of decking that you're going to have to replace. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to help obviously train your crew on when decks need to be replaced and when they don't. Okay, you're incentivized to replace deck because obviously you're getting paid for it. So classic example is just because you see a water spot or a stain or something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that piece of decking needs to be replaced. The thing that tells me is that if it's a significant water damage, if it's a soft spot, then clearly it's got to be replaced. Okay, and one of the things that is great for anybody that's doing residential roofing is the ability to really investigate in the attic. And I know this is a rarity, and you're probably saying, Trent, this is great, but this is real world. I don't ever get access to the attic. Well, if you do, I'm just saying, if you do, take photos of what stuff looks like up there, because that's going to help you see nail pattern, regardless of whether you are in a jurisdiction that has its own building code, like Florida building code, or you're operating under, international building code with manufacturer's recommendations. You're going to have to be able to identify nail pattern. So that will tell you and help you identify if there's issues there. Something else that you'll be able to see is if you've got structural issues beyond the roof. So oftentimes if you have rotted deck, you may have trusses that need work, and that may raise issues with regard to your license, and if you need to get a general contractor in there, okay, depending on where you're at. It'll also help you understand where the leaks are, okay, so you can see the areas before you even tear off that roof. You're going to know what the issues are. And let me just tell you about safety. We do a ton of OSHA defense. We probably do more OSHA defense in construction than anybody I know. And one of the issues that we often have, some of the most critical injuries are when you get crew up on deck that's not any good and they fall through the deck, or you are a supplier and you're roof-topping materials and those materials go through the deck. Okay, so being able to do that, attic under the deck inspection is great because it really gives you an opportunity to kind of see what things are like. Take videos and photos. That kind of stuff is really useful because it helps document pre-existing conditions. So if you're in, let's say you're doing commercial work and you see some, wet ceiling tiles, it'd be nice to have some evidence of that. If you're doing a walkthrough with the property manager or the owner or whoever it might be, it'd be great to be able to have some evidence like that. Okay, keep in mind if you are doing some investigation and you're concerned about potential liability, in most states, if you take those photos or videos and then email them to your lawyer, there's possibility that the lawyer might be able to then say, hey, this is attorney-client privilege or attorney work product. So oftentimes when I know I'm in a sticky situation or the contractor's in it, it's got an issue, I'll say, look, go out there, take all this stuff, send it to me, and we'll do our best to protect it so that if it does end up going south, we can try to assert some of these privileges on it. But documenting that before you start work is critical. Once you touch it, you own it. Okay, and that's something that I try to hit home because even though you're trying to do nice things for customers, recognize that once you touch it, you generally own it. So document stuff in advance. That's going to be very useful for you. Talk a little bit about document retention. We're going to touch base on this in a little bit more as we get into it. Document retention, especially when it comes to photos and videos and things of that nature, varies all over the place, okay? And we work in both the US and Canada has very strict rules. So if any of you work over the border, it's very strict rules as far as what you have to keep and what you don't have to keep. We're going to talk a little bit later about best practices, things that you should do in order to make sure that you are keeping critical documentation. But obviously, anytime you touch a project, especially if you're doing residential, get those photos in advance. Do what you can to document stuff. Even if you can't get access to the interior, take those in progress photos, man. That's going to be really useful for you because it's going to show you what the conditions were and what they weren't. Okay. And you got to train your crew on protecting yourself, because all it takes is one good claim, to put you from, black to red. So that's something that I definitely want to hit home. A lot of this is legal and practical business knowledge, but what I want to do today is really just help you issue spot so that you take these things back and say, you know what, here's some things that I can do that's best practices that will help reduce liability so I don't have to spend time on the phone with Trent unless you want to talk about cool stuff. I'd like to turn it over now to EagleView to talk about some of the great technology that they have to kind of address some of these issues. So, Mark, we're lucky to have you here today. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself and then show us kind of what you got?
Yeah, thanks, Trent. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Rains. I'm the Director of Solution Sales here at EagleView. I've been with EagleView for almost 8 years, and it's really amazing to see the progress that the industry has made when it comes to technology. EagleView is by far the leader when it comes to aerial photography, as well as remote 3D premium roof reports. So it's really exciting, and to Trent's point, you can use EagleView reports to to mitigate risk when it comes to estimating, and we also have some other cool platforms within EagleView that can allow for that photo capture to show the damage that's up there right now, and the taking photographs throughout the whole install process. So we're happy to be here, Trent. Thank you so much for having us, and we'll get started. So let's do this. Cool. So we'll buzz through and stop me if you have any questions, Trent or John. So we're going to do a quick introduction to EagleView. One of the biggest misconceptions is people get with EagleView is that they think we use satellite imagery. That's not the case. We actually use aerial imagery. So looking at this photograph here of a wine glass from an orthogonal view, it kind of looks like a pint glass. However, when you are using satellite imagery to do measurements, it can really sway the numbers of your estimate or your bid, while our aircrafts are actually taking both the top-down photos and oblique angles to allow the contractor to give the most accurate estimate out there in the field. Each one of our planes is equipped with very high-powered, high-resolution photograph, and you can see from these camera angles here, this is how we're able to create a 3D model of the structure, which is really fun. So when our planes are flying over, they're just capturing continuous photographs, and the cool thing about it is that there's metadata included in all these photographs. So latitude, longitude, GIS positioning, all that nerd stuff, really, just to make sure that, hey, we're measuring the structure that the roofing contractor is going out there to put an estimate on, as well as order the materials for the installation. So this is our current capture right here, where our planes fly about 2,000 to 4,000 feet, and they fly along a kind of like mowing the grass up in the air, and they're flying back and forth and capturing all of these photographs of these existing structures. We're moving to a different platform now that allows us to fly higher and capture more of a large swath of homes. So now we can start getting those rural areas, and when we do capture them, we can build these 3D models, and we have 4 different types of reports. We have our quick squares, premium roof report, commercial report, and walls. So getting all of those different oblique angles allows us to build the structure from the ground up, get accurate pitch calculations, which lead to accurate lineal measurements, accurate area square footage measurements, and it really raises that level of confidence for the contractor when they're going out there to do their presentation with the homeowner, and limit their their risk when it comes to estimating, because the last thing we want to have happen is for them to underbid a job and win it, and like Trent said, go from black to red. That's not what we want. We want them to be confident in our accuracy, and it helps a lot of people close more jobs, which is really exciting. One thing that people might not know is we have 98% of the US population covered. We have all the major metro areas covered for our friends north of the border in Canada, which is really exciting. We have 150 planes that fly in the winter time. So we fly in the winter time because the leaves are typically not on the trees, and there's no hindrances when we're doing takeoffs. We are moving to flying in the summertime as well too, for leaf on exposure for our new solar product that can offer shading analysis without even going to the job site. We use the winter photographs as well as the leaf on or summertime photographs, and we can build a really nice solar case for homeowners that are looking for solar that they want to put on their roof. We have 200 patents. We can deliver 45,000 reports in any given period. So if hurricanes are hitting the eastern seaboard and there's hailstorms going on in Texas and in Colorado, you can be certain that you'll get your reports back within a 24-hour time period. We have over 500 million images in our library, and I saw a press release this year that we actually, just this year, we processed our 100 millionth image this year. So our planes are up there in the skies, probably right now, flying, capturing the most up-to-date photographs of these structures out there, and we're ready to work for the contractors out there and do the heavy lifting for you guys and get you the most accurate estimates out there. So documenting job site conditions. This is interesting, and I was very excited when Trent invited EagleView to come aboard here. One thing that we actually do in storm or catastrophic scenarios is we have the before pictures, but we get our planes up in the air about 24 to 48 hours after a tornado or major event happens, and we fly again. And this is for insurance organizations as well as contractors to help start to rebuild the community. You can't measure what's not what's not there. So our database is robust enough that we have photographs probably going back and to 2001 if need be. So we get up in the air really quickly, and this really helps with those catastrophic events. Also with the photographs, this is a screenshot from our new platform called EagleView Works. You can actually capture photographs through the application, bring that down to the kitchen counter or over a webinar now with the pandemic that we're in. And you can actually show the homeowners what's really going on up there on the roof. And Trent mentioned that early in this webinar. So having that accessibility all in one place just creates a really delightful experience, not only for the homeowner, but the roofing sales rep as well too, because they can actually talk to those visual aids, and you can take them through the the install process as well too, which is which can, reduce your liability up there if you do see some damaged plywood or some soft spots and stuff like that. So this is just showing how we take our images, turn them into 3D measurements, and then into our reports. One thing that EagleView has is a robust partnership with a lot of these, we call them channel marketing partners. So they're a lot with CRMs. Job Nimbus is a pretty prominent one. So is Job Progress. Leap Sumo Quotes is a sales remote tool. RenoWorks 3D visualization. So we work with a lot of folks within the industry to help them, close these bids or these sales calls that they're putting together. So proper estimating, like I had mentioned before, the EagleView Premium Report, which is the cornerstone of our business, allows the contractor to get accurate measurements of every critical component of that roof when it comes to area, square footages, lineal measurements. And these can be used in the sales process. They can be used for production planning. They can be used for warranty paperwork with your manufacturer. So there's a lot of powerful things that you can do with these EagleView reports, and it's not just a pretty PDF or DXF file. It can be used for multiple different aspects within your organization. One thing we did come up with at the latter part of last year, we used machine learning to come up with suggested waste factor, and we've put a lot of ingredients into this cake to bake this cake properly, and we give recommended waste calculations for all the different roof types out there in the United States and Canada. We can also provide blueprint takeoffs for new construction homes. We use the same software that we use for doing the 3D modeling on the photographs that our aircraft takes, and it'll build you out an accurate 3D model of the blueprint report as well too, which is really exciting, and it can limit the risk on installing roofs on a lot of the new homes that are being built currently. And it comes in the same exact PDF report that you get as our premium roof report, which is really exciting. Almost there, contract management. We talked about the EagleView Edge, and with contract management, with our new Works platform, you can actually capture leads, schedule appointments, and this is all powered by the EagleView report data to create really quick and accurate bids. You can send proposals via email, via webinar. We have digitally signed documents on here. We have camera capabilities for documenting the damage on the roof currently and through the install process. And the nice thing about the EagleView Works platform is that it can all be done remote. It can all be done virtually. And we want to keep the contractors safe, especially with what's going on right now, and they probably look like gems keeping the homeowner safe, because if you think about it, a roof really keeps all of the assets on the interior of their home secure, and it's a vital part of a structure, right? So the EagleView measurements transformed into this EagleView Works application can really create a nice sales experience for both the homeowner as well as the roofing sales rep too. And it's all about documentation. So you'll have a digital depository or digital filing cabinet with all your leads and all your proposals and contracts. So when Trent was talking about the documentation, they never go away, and it's all cloud-based, which is really exciting. And here are some of the key components of Works where you can help yourself prepare, present, and perform. It does come with a 3D visualization tool, so it gives the homeowner a nice experience of showing what their house is going to look like when the install is complete, and you have a nice analytics dashboard to see how your sales reps are performing out there in the field. And how Eagle View can help. I'll end with this. There's a couple customer quotes here that are really good partners of ours, and they've been partners of ours for 10+ years, and it's just really fascinating to hear the successes they've had utilizing Eagle View Premium reports with their bidding as well as their production process, and limiting their liability when it comes to creating estimates as well as accurate material orders. So Trent, that's what I have, and I hope people learn from that we actually take high resolution photograph from our own aircraft, and yeah, and I'll switch it back over to you, Trent and John.
Great, thanks, Mark. That was really informative. And I want to let people know, I've used Eagle View products for years, and the way that I end up using them a lot is if I end up in a dispute, oftentimes I will use the Eagle View photos and the information and documentation that they put together to help illustrate certain points. So I use them often as exhibits in trial when I'm trying to explain to a judge or to a jury, how this roof looks, where things were done. I use them when I go to mediation because it helps, tell a story. And I think they're really, it's worth just the price for admission just to have that documentation, because what you're doing is creating a permanent record of how that structure looked before you touched it, and that's priceless because it's almost like a liability insurance policy. So I look at it that way. Obviously, I'm your typical pessimistic lawyer, but that's one of the beneficial things from my perspective, and it's made my life a lot easier. So Mark, I don't know if I've ever told you that, but thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
I want to turn now to proper estimating, and although I know enough to be dangerous, I'm going to turn it over to the expert at it. And again, John Kenny, for those of you that didn't know, he's worked at top 100, top 50 roofing contractors for 45 years. He knows everything there is to know about estimating. So with that intro, I will turn it over to him.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. A couple things I want to cover. These are some basic tips to help you out. If you do have a job that has plans and specifications, you want to do an initial review. You want to identify all of the items that need to be estimated. Pay special attention to the general conditions and the supplementary conditions that are in the specifications thoroughly. That is where a lot of things will be hidden that will get you into trouble, either financially or later on legally. Even if it's a job that's, say, a re-roof project that you are the one that are putting the specifications together because you're designing the roof system basically. So your proposal becomes your set of plans and specifications for that project. So be very careful to understand exactly what you're promoting to your customer, because you have a liability in that as well. Job site visits, if of course this is for if it's a re-roof condition on either residential or commercial. It's great to have the technology as was just described to you. We used it many times. It's a wonderful tool to get you through and give you all the information you need, but you still need to visit the job site to accurately look at your details. It may not be evident from the report. They'll pick them up, but you're not going to know if there's one roof, two roofs, three roofs on there for when you're calculating your labor. So it's always an advantage to go out and make sure you look at your buildings. You want to build your estimate from the ground up. What I mean by that is you want to keep all your quantities uniform and consistent, understand your products and material pricing, get accurate labor units, include all your other costs. And what you want to do with that is have your job set up. If it's a commercial project or residential, whether it's felt paper, insulation, screw it to the deck, organize your estimate in the same manner that you're going to actually be doing the job. When you go to review it at a later time to get your price set, or you want to find out if the estimate is accurate, it's so much easier to review any estimate to make sure you have all the components if it's in a proper order that makes sense. I can tell you over the years, I've had top-notch estimators come into me with a project, and I'm like going through it. They're explaining. I got to review it. It's all jumbled up. I'm like, okay, well, what insulation pricing did you use? Oh, I forgot the insulation. And that really comes from not being organized, putting your estimate together. Assembling your cost data. Use historical data from your existing projects in your company if you have that. If you don't, you want to start keeping that as a record so you can compare your jobs or what you're doing in the future to what you performed in the past. Always get quotes. Don't just assume pricing, especially in today's environment, and organize your data in a manner so that you can go ahead and look up anything you need on a quick basis. Establish the estimating review process. This is probably one of the most important items you can do on an estimate. You want to have your estimator go through the project, make sure it's correct in his view. You want to make sure you have your operations team or the person, foreman, whoever's going to run the job, whatever you entrust to take care of your operations, to have input into your estimates. And then at the end, you want to go through it, or whoever you have assigned in your company, depending on the size, that's responsible for the financial welfare of your company, to do the final evaluation. Maybe that's not going to be true on a small dollar amount. You may dictate that down, but you want to set guidelines. That's the most important thing you can do, is have a procedure in place of how your estimate gets reviewed before it goes out to any one of your clients. A lot of money has been lost in sloppiness in this procedure. And we're up on our tips. One other last thing I'll jump in and say, if anyone, there is a full white paper on this on how to validate your whole estimating process and put it together in your company. Feel free to contact me here at Cottney, and I'll make sure you get a copy for your use. Turn it back over to Trent.
Thank you, John. And Mark, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. You mentioned some of the stuff that EagleView's products can help with estimating. Why don't you just touch on that briefly again, kind of, tying into what John was talking about.
Yeah. So with the new EagleView Works platform, to John's point, when it comes to estimating, this is a really clean and easy way to give yourself a historical look on previous jobs that you've estimated on. It keeps your numbers really tidy, not just the EagleView data, but the numbers that are associated with it on how people are creating their estimates or their bids, as well as what their contracts look like, and if there are any expiration dates on the proposals or contracts, to make sure that they fit in those date ranges. So what we built is something that the industry could really use when it comes to keeping sales reps on track to get that homeowner's signature on a retail residential roof job, and it's very, very easy to use. I'm not a roofer by trade. However, if I did need to go work for a roofing organization, I could pop open this app and probably be a professional roofing sales rep in the matter of a couple hours after playing around with our EagleView Works application, and which would be customized to any organization that wants to move forward with it.
Yeah, and that's great. One of the things that we've kind of realized, especially during COVID-19, is that technology not only is something that makes you more efficient, it's a necessity. So having the capability to effectively cut corners and get your efficiency up through techniques and tactics that EagleView offers is a significant benefit to contractors that are out there. And it's one of the things that we're always looking for here is, how can we operate more efficiently? How can we reduce, risk at the same time, and make sure that we're communicating with all the team members in a proper fashion to get the end product out. So last thing I want to turn to briefly is I want to talk about contract management a little bit. And I've talked about this before, but really what I want to focus on is the points at the end, storage and retention, and how to go about doing that. So, one of the great things that Mark mentioned was the fact that, you can use technology as a sales tool. And I encourage, any roofing contractor listening to this to view things in that manner. Getting proposals and contracts signed via DocuSign is critical. I was having a sales meeting earlier today, and we were just talking about conceptually, customers, the way it is today is as opposed to even 10 or 15 years ago is, the customer is here today, gone today. You have to be able to close sales. You have to be able to close when you have that lead on the line. And if you can't do that, any impediment to that sale is giving that potential customer an opportunity to go to your competitor. So having the capability to have electronic document signing, documentation, storage, and manipulation at your fingertips will give you a competitive advantage. Don't just view it as, oh, this is Trent with another, how to save liability tactic. This is going to make you money, right? And I always kind of view legal and safety and HR, even though they serve primary purposes, they can be used for sales techniques. A great example is, a company that really promotes safety should absolutely use that in their sales. If they won safety awards, if they've been nominated or promoted, by the National Safety Council or whatever it might be, especially if you're doing commercial work, you can go to potential owner or general contractors and say, look, you should hire us because unlike the other people you're looking at, we stand out because of our safety. We're committed to it. You don't have to worry about a serious injury or something else happening on your job site because we have these credentials. Okay, same holds true with legal. If you end up in a situation where you're getting sued a bunch or you have a lot of claims against you or you have a history of doing that, that's going to muddy your reputation and prevent your sales. So don't just view these as sort of the, eye-rolling component of being a roofing contractor. They're critical for sales and reputation management. Let's talk a little bit about document management, the kind of things that you need to be able to manipulate at your fingertips. Okay, first is before construction starts, you really want to focus on your contract and sort of the key terms. And, I was reviewing a contract earlier today for a contractor out west. And what I like to focus on are just the key things. I'm not going to sit there and tell you to change your cleanup provision or change a lot of your safety provisions. It's going to be focused on indemnification, contingent payment, which basically means you're not going to get paid until the contractor gets paid. Claims, delays, provisions, anything that's going to prevent you from getting paid on a claim or put you in a bad position. And what I try to do is review contracts with a very light touch, right? Because you don't want to risk losing that business if you are marking stuff up all over the place. So again, technology documentation allows you to manipulate stuff electronically, so it's a lot cleaner, and you don't have to necessarily worry about raising some of those red flags. Make sure that if you are in the process of bidding a project that might require a bid bond, that you have really looked into that and you recognize that if you don't move forward with that project, that you will be liable for that bid bond amount and ultimately to the surety for reimbursement. And the most important thing really is insurance requirements, not just for you, but many of you out there, especially in the residential world, you may use sub labor. Okay, and I've done previous webinars for, on sub labor, but one of the biggest issues that we face is they just don't have the proper insurance. So use documentation and checklists to make sure that you are getting the correct type of insurance from your sub tiers, that you are monitoring it, that you are not just asking for certificates of insurance, that you're actually asking for policies to see what the coverage is, to see when it ends, and to get that critical contact information that you need. During construction, obviously, lien waivers and releases, progress pay apps, all those types of things that you need in order to get paid. You have people in your office that handle this stuff, but to the extent that you can streamline it and do things electronically, you will save time, you will create efficiency, and you will not be as dependent on manual labor, which is always prone to mistakes. Okay, I read a statistic recently. Our statistician that works with us through our Toronto office told us that on average, there's 23% inefficiency on a commercial project of $100,000 or more that results from administrative overhead and mistakes through that administrative process. So think about that. Okay, you you could get another quarter on top of your profit if you are able to streamline it through technology and make sure that you're reducing mistakes rather than having an inefficient system. Project completion, obviously, you know, the final payment is always the most difficult payment. Everybody loves you when they sign the contract. Everybody hates you by the end of it. So the goal is to make sure that you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's and done everything you need to do to get payment. One of the topics that I'll talk about in another webinar is warranties and how the, you know, contractors should never forget that you don't necessarily get a warranty until you're paid in full, and your contract should say that, and you should be able to use that to get paid. So, you know, keep that in mind. Now, what I want to end with is I want to talk about best practices for storage and retention. And, you know, Mark mentioned some great ideas and some things that EagleView can do to help store some of the critical documentation. But we often get asked, you know, Trent, I got all this documentation. What the heck do I do with it? I don't want to pay to scan it. I just got boxes and boxes of stuff sitting in my warehouse that I need to get rid of. That's, you know, either ridden with roaches or mice at this point. What do I do? So normally what I tell them, I say, look, you need to keep certain documents because you might get sued, right? Especially if you're doing condo work or if you're doing homeowner work or work that's prone to getting lawsuits. So what you want to do is make sure that, you know, you're keeping it at least as long as what's known as the statute of repose for your state. Okay, so the statute of repose, everybody knows what the statute of limitations are. They're familiar enough. Okay, statute of limitations is the amount of time you have to bring a claim. So great example is here in the great state of Florida, you got 4 years to bring a claim on a breach of a construction contract, okay? There's what's known as a statute of repose. In Florida, it's 10 years. In other states, it can be as little as 3, but you need to figure out what that is, and that's how long you want to keep the documents, because what that says is that there's a tolling for discovery. So a classic example is a latent defect in a roof, one that you can't see, but the homeowner finds 5 years into it. Well, you may be beyond every warranty period known to man, but at the end of the day, they may still be able to present a claim because it falls within that statute of repose. So keep any of your contracts, any dispute-related documents for at least 10 years or whatever the minimum amount is for the statute of repose. Recognize that there are certain IRS rules, okay? I recommend that you keep all IRS-related documents for at least 7 years, okay? You know, that's not necessarily the blanket. You know, some of the requirements are 3 years, some are 6. Just keep them for 7. It's easy to remember that, okay? Many of you use construction liens, commonly referred to as mechanics liens. Depending on which state it is, you may need to keep these documents anywhere from 90 days to 6 years, depending on what you're doing with them. So recognize those are the kinds of documents you want to keep. Many of them are public record. If they're public record, don't care. But the backup documentation to support them, you need to keep, because you may end up in court having to defend or argue to prosecute one. Defective work or materials claims. We talked again about the importance of keeping stuff. So the great thing about EagleView is that basically you have a picture in time of what that project looked like at that point. So regardless of whether a claim is brought year 1 or year 10, you have the ability to go back and look at it and remember what it was. So if you're like me, I'm lucky if I can remember my name in the morning, right? So I'm not going to remember a residential project I did 20 years ago or 10 years ago. It's not going to, you know, I'm not going to remember it. But if I've got something that can refresh my recollection, I'll remember, oh, yeah. I remember that project. That was with that homeowner that I couldn't stand, that had the dog and had that flashing issue, and and then all that, it all of a sudden jogs back. So that's something that I think is very useful for you. And as I mentioned here at the end, you know, the general rule of thumb for either the US or Canada is always keep the stuff as long as whatever the longest time requirement is. And this changes for different things. Like, for example, there are certain I-9 requirements that you've got to keep I-9s for a certain period of time. There are certain HR document requirements. Whatever you want to do is keep it for the longest time possible. And what do I recommend? Best practices: go to cloud-based storage, go to you know, paperless type environment. And the key thing is you want redundancy. So we've got redundancy upon redundancy upon redundancy here. You know, we've got cloud-based storage, we've got backup storage for that. I'm pretty sure John has already implemented backup storage on Mars right now for us in the event that the Earth goes down. So we are about as backed up as you can get. But if you're not currently doing that, if you're still in the age of paper, you got to make that transition, man. Just trust me when I say that, because it's awful. Those documents are money. Think about all those documents that you're paying to store those documents. Even if you're not paying, you're paying because it's reducing your lease space. It's reducing your operational capacity. It is an anchor. And that's how you need to start looking at it. Is that stuff is dead weight. That's, that's 1990 stuff. You got to get rid of it and you got to move on. And even if it costs some money to do it because you're going to be able to manipulate that data quicker. It's going to save you money in the long run, and it will reduce your rodent and insect populations. Mark, any other comments on that before we wrap up?
No, I think you guys nailed it, and you did a good job. I guess before really technology hit the industry, the filing cabinets had all the documentation in there, and you're right. Saving all those documents is they're worth money, right? So now if they're easily accessible, there's a lot of great tools out there in the roofing industry and the construction industry to have them easily accessible. Will save the contractors a lot of time if any of these issues arise.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've hit on a bunch of different things today, but I always save some nuggets for the end because I want people to be able to stay on to the end and recognize there's value even at the end. So clearly you need to document your existing conditions, right? That's one of the most critical things you can do. But let me give you this is a trick of the trade, okay? And you're getting this one as part of this webinar. So one of the things I always do in all my contracts, regardless of whether it's a residential contract or it's a commercial contract, you put in what's known as a pre-existing condition clause. Okay, now pay attention to this. So the pre-existing condition clause, what it says is it says that you, the contractor, are not liable for any pre-existing conditions, including without limitation, mold, dry rot, termite damage, algae, spores, whatever, alien infestation, whatever it might be. Okay, you list all of those things out, and what that will do, coupled with good documentation, will give you a contractual basis as a springboard to help defend claims. And keep in mind, your contracts are not just legal, they're to educate your customer. Because 1 out of 20 customers, you'll have a slight problem. 1 out of 50, you'll have a major problem. Use that contract as your trench to fall back in, okay? And that kind of provision will save you in the long run. Why are we here talking about this? Well, we have a fantastic subscription plan. And if you're not familiar with it, you need to take a look at it. Average savings is 53% for our roofing contractors that are on this. We have hundreds upon hundreds that are already doing this. And think of it this way. You basically get your own general counsel for a small fee every single month. You get unlimited contact with us. You get unlimited contract review. And you get somebody that really knows what they're talking about. Okay, roofing is what we do. Everybody knows that. It's what we do. So it is a tremendous plan. It's something that I created 6 years ago because I don't like lawyers. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create something so that when I see you guys, instead of looking the other way, you're high-fiving me because I'm your business partner. I'm helping you not get sued. Okay, and this is what that does. This allows you to be proactive. So EagleView is part of our great network of Affinity Partners, and there are special discounts that you can only get if you are a Cottony subscriber. So reach out to our customer service. We're happy to tell you about that, but we're very proud of our Affinity Partners. We work closely with them and we support them. So I want to thank everybody for attending this. As always, I appreciate you guys. We will recirculate this and post it as well. Mark, anything you want to end with?
No, thanks so much for having me on and discussing EagleView, our new platform, and I thought this was really educational, and I think that all these contractors should sign up to be part of the Cottony group. I mean, there's no better power than having you as a partner there, Trent, that can help them through some of these legalities in the workplace.
Well, thank you, my friend. I feel the same way about EagleView. You guys are great. I've known and worked with you for a long time. So thank you, everybody, for attending. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week.
Take care.